Now, we all know the heavy hitters to this movie. Heavy hitters being Pedro Pascal and the great Denzel Washington. I feel like just their names alone pulled the majority of weight for this movie with the marketing, with the attention, with the allure, right? You say Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal in the Gladiator II movie, we're coming. We I didn't even need to know who they were. I didn't need to know who their characters were. None of that. I didn't need to know how long they were going to be in the movie, their screen time, none of that stuff. They pulled the weight of the marketing, in my opinion, especially Denzel. Um, that's something we're gonna dive into further down as we discuss the movie. But one of the big things that was hyping the movie up was this Denzel's greatest role? That I mean, just the fact that people were even presenting that as an idea was enough for people to go to theaters to go check it out. Even if you weren't a Gladiator 1 fan, you want to go see, was this Denzel Washington's best role? A lot of people are talking about it, right? But with that said, with our two heavy hitters already known, it was Paul Mescal, Hano, Lucius that was the dark horse in this movie. The leading actor was the dark horse of the film. And so I'll say this right now. I had no idea who this guy was. Paul Mescal, I had not one clue who this guy was, right? I saw him on the trailers and I was like, you know what? He looks like a good fit for this type of movie. But I don't know. I've never seen another movie with him in it. I don't think. Pedro Pascal, he needs no intro. Denzel Washington needs no intro. Paul Mescal, he's gonna be the one uh actor that I'm actually going to dive into his filmography very, very quickly just to check out what his prior roles were because I had no clue who this guy was. And he just came out of left field. Paul Mescal's an Irish actor. He's Irish. That's crazy. It's only crazy because I didn't hear an ounce of his dialect or his accent within the movie, which is fantastic. I mean, he's an actor. That's uh, a fundamental criteria, I guess, to be able to act is switching up your accent. But still, I'm American, so I feel like Americans struggle way more with the accents than other people from other countries do, as I've taken notice. Like if you've seen like Idris Elba, for example, if you've seen Idris Elba in The Wire, bro, it took how long for me to realize he was British? I didn't realize until a couple of years ago that Idris Elba was British. But I digress. Let's go back into his films real fast. And so I'm looking at his films, y'all. And the first three that I'm looking at, because I'm not going to dive into all of them, but his most recent films were called After Sun, Bo, and All of Us Strangers. I had not heard of none of these movies. And I'd be willing to guess. I'm gonna take a leap right here and say that these are like romance drama films. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on All of Us Strangers, and we're going to take a quick dive into what this is. And this is all gonna build up into a point that I want to make, but right now it's a hypothesis, and so I can't accurately state it until I see what this is about. A screenwriter draw. So this is the synopsis for All of Us Strangers, starring Paul Mescal. A screenwriter drawn back to his childhood home enters into a fledgling relationship with his downstairs neighbor while discovering a mysterious new way to heal from losing his parents 30 years ago. Yep, a romance drama. I thought so. Okay, I figured. And by the way this is looking, Paul Mescal, if you were just listening to this and not watching the video, Paul Mescal is looking at this man lovingly. Um, and so this is a very, very romantic film. This is a very romantic film. There is a lot of romance going on in this trailer right now that IMDb is playing. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a step back, okay? And we took that little fork in the road so that way I can make the point I'm about to make. This man just hit his Ryan Reynolds pivot. Paul Mescal just hit his Ryan Reynolds pivot. Ryan Reynolds for years was a rom-com guy. We all knew him as a rom-com guy. And then he did Blade Trinity. And then he did Green Lantern. And then he became Marvel Jesus. I can see I could see Paul Mescal in the next couple of years, in the next 5 to 10 years, climbing the Hollywood action star ranks and becoming one of them ones. I may be speaking too early. I may be gassing this man up too much, but this was such a hard pivot for what looked to be a romance guy. Not a rom-com guy. He looked like a dead set romance guy. Okay. So big flowers to Paul Mescal for making the pivot. I appreciate it because you ended up playing one of my favorite roles of 2024. Okay. And with that said, one of my favorite actors of 2024, or at least one of my favorite characters of 2024, Lucius, we are going to go and see just how much did this movie break the box office. Because when I tell you guys, I was looking at it and it came up just shy of the top 10. But I also think last year had like 2 or 3 billion-dollar worldwide grossing films, which is absolutely crazy. I feel like most years, I could be wrong. I could be absolutely wrong about this. I haven't been tracking uh uh box office gross worldwide, year over year. I've not been doing that. I'm going to start doing it for these little series of videos I'm going to be doing. Okay. But with that said, because there was what to me seemed like an anomaly of billion-dollar movies, that kind of pushed Gladiator II out of the top 10. Had it not been for 1 or 2 of those billion-dollar movies hitting so big, we might have seen this in the top 10. But starting first, what did it cost? The estimated budget was $250 million. Again, I am very, very new to actually tracking the numbers on movies. Okay. It's not something that I typically do, but I remember one of the narratives about the budget was that it was ridiculous, that it was absolutely stupid. And I recall Denzel talking about how it was one of the largest, if not the largest film he had ever been on. And I guess he meant set wise because this man has been like all over like he's traveled internationally for several of his movies, right? But for Denzel Washington, such a veteran in the game, to say that this was one of the biggest movies he worked on, it makes sense with a $250 million budget. Now, watch this. In America, in Canada, if this movie had just been released in the US and Canada, they would have been in an $80 million deficit because they only generated 172 mil grossing um within North America, within the US and Canada. Okay. Which 172 million still sounds like a lot to me, but to have a $250 million budget, um, that is not good. As a producer, that those are not the numbers I want to see coming in for all the money that I put out. Okay. It was really the worldwide gross that had pushed this movie into profits, into big green digits. Grossing worldwide, it was $458 million, about $42 million shy of $500 million. Okay, which is nothing to laugh about. Okay, that's a huge, huge figure. Now, I will say this. I will say this because I like this movie a lot. I did like this movie a lot. There was a lot of I feel like there was a lot of mixed reviews about this movie. I think the general consensus online was that it was a solid and decent movie, but in the theaters, in the streets, amongst your friend groups, I heard a lot of mixed opinions about this movie. So I liked it a lot. Um, but with that said, it could have been much better. There were areas that I think the movie could have improved upon. And W- And I say that to say specifically about this $458 million worldwide gross. I believe that if Gladiator 2 had tweaked the film a little bit, if they had went into a different directorial direction, a little bit of a different storytelling direction, off the strength of Gladiator 1, this 458 mil could have been pushing a bill. It could have been pushing $1 billion off the strength of Gladiator 1, how ridiculous that movie is. You have the sequel, you have the star players, right? You have Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal, and the biggest lost opportunity, in my opinion, of the movie, the biggest sunk cost was Peter Mensa. And we will get into that later. But if you write the story differently, if you give all if you give Pedro Pascal and Peter Mensa more screen time, and if and yeah, you mix in those two things, which I will go into detail later, I think this movie hits a billion because last year was the year of billion-dollar movies. Okay. This year in 2025, we may see $1 or $2 billion movies. Superman is definitely going to be a $1 billion movie. I can't think of any other ones off the top of my head, but last year was the year people were throwing money at the movie theaters. Okay. But with that said, okay, since I teased it a little bit, let's actually start diving in to my reflections on the movie. Okay, because I got a lot of them. I took a couple of little notes that I want to share with you guys. We're gonna start at the top. I'm gonna share the things I liked and the things I didn't like. Okay, we're gonna start at the very beginning of the things that I liked about this movie. The first thing, literally, actually, the very first part of the movie is the watercolor intro with the montage, the clips of the first Gladiator was stupid hard. I don't know, for me personally, just for me personally, on a personal level, I fucked with that shit so hard. I just love that. It was just so it was just the perfect balance of quick, sequent artistry. I like that. Okay. Now, the movie starts off with Hano and he's cooling with his wife. He's putting his hands through some grains and all that good stuff. The first real big scene is that naval battle. Okay. I like that part a lot. The naval battle went hard. Okay. I love the flaming arrows. I love the flaming jars that they were shooting back and forth at one another. And I felt so bad for the boys at the bottom of the deck rowing them boats. Because good God, what a way to go out. First of all, I'm like, are y'all slaves? Are y'all slaves? Because y'all slaves, and then on top of it, y'all at war. Y'all gonna get set on fire. Like that was just not the way I would want to go out personally. And that should look like it's hard as hell to do. Okay. Rowing those big ass boats through the waves. But who was on those boats? Who was riding through them waves? Okay. Another great thing that I liked about the movie was Pedro Pascal was on them boats. Okay. They didn't hide him. They didn't dangle Pedro Pascal in the trailers just to throw him in for like 15 minutes in the middle or the end of the movie. Right away, he's sipping his cup. We don't know what's in his cup. We don't know what type of morning he likes to start his day off with. Okay. But he was sipping his cup, ready for war, right within the first 5 minutes of the movie. And I fuck with that. Okay. I also like, I also like the fact, I'll go into that after this. Okay. But they go through their fights. The fights are looking cool. The fights are looking sweet. Not only is Pedro going into the first 5 minutes of the movie, he's also charging in. He leads from the front. He's a leader who leads from the front. He's comes storming in to the fortress and starts taking heads, y'all. Starts taking heads. Now, unfortunately, Hano puts up a good fight. Okay, Hano puts up a good fight, but his wife, who was nice. She was very nice. With the bow and arrows. She got Ingrided, if I'm saying her name properly. from Game of Thrones. Okay, she was up there doing her thing, and then boom, got hit with the sneak attack. Okay, uh, from there, the next thing I like was the transition where Hano cuts away into the river Styx. Okay, and I love this part, right? Because it's like I don't think there's ways you could interpret it. I don't think that he was dreaming that, right? Because it always he always you'll see it throughout the film, him diving into the river Styx. Not diving in literally, but like him jumping into this like otherworldly, ethereal type of dimension where the river Styx is, and he sees his wife and she's leaving on the boat. And I just fuck with the whole scene, the whole vibe of it. Okay, let me go and pause this real fast too, because this is not even the last duel. I don't even know what this is. And I was like, I don't want to ride these trailers too hard, for any copyright issues. IMBD, I fuck with you. Please let me keep all this stuff up. And we're gonna keep it pushing. We're going to keep doing this until we can't do it no more, y'all. But I fucked with the River Styx moments. It gave me 300 vibes. I don't know why. Like, those vibes of 300, how it's like it got the gray hues. It has the mysticism. Like it almost felt like an homage to the 300 style. And I could be off. Maybe I'm reading into that incorrectly. Okay. But those are the vibes it gave me, and I really fucked with it. Okay. Another vibe that I really liked about the movie was Pedro Pascal's whole troubled conqueror vibe, okay? And I kind of like that about him. I was not expecting that. I didn't have an expectation of who his character was going to be going into the movie, but I don't know, there's something I I admire about the troubled conqueror, okay? Because you see that he is empathetic. You see, I think when he conquers his people, he said, well, not when he conquers his people, when he conquers the Numidians, that he says something along the lines of like grace to the conquered or some shit like that. It's something along those lines. But you see, he is an empathetic conqueror. He is, he is, he is a mass murderer, uh, an elite killer, a leader of armies who is cursed with those abilities. And I say curse because that's probably how he receives that internally. Like it is a blessing and a curse that I have this. A blessing that he can be at the top of his culture, he can be at the pinnacle of his society and extremely revered by his citizens, but you can see the pain of carrying that weight for the greatness that he has. And whether or not you agree or disagree with, the whole conquering stuff and, how he went about doing things, I think we can all agree that it takes a level of greatness to do things along those lines. Okay. Which is also another good transition into another thing that I really liked about the movie. Speaking of greatness, Denzel's Macrinus. Okay. Denzel's Macrinus. Now, listen up, guys. That was one of the pools of the movie that they definitely finessed that into the marketing. And they didn't even do it into the marketing of like the actual trailers. They did it off like the social media conversations. They did it off like just the 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 streets, people just talking and whispering like, "Yo, is this Denzel's favorite or best movie?" You had people really start to question it. A lot of people said no. A lot of people said no. This was not his best uh role. This was not his best role ever. This is not the best character he played ever. But just the fact that this movie even got people saying that was genius, right? It was genius. Uh, with that said, though, where do I sit on the fence with it? I don't think I am also in agreement. I don't think this is not Denzel's best role ever. Um, but what I will also disagree with was people on the complete opposite spectrum saying that this was Denzel's worst movie ever. okay, or worst role ever. That also was not the case. Okay, that also was not the case. This was not Denzel's worst role of all time. Okay, I'm in the middle. I really really liked it. I really really liked it. Macrinus stole just about every scene he was in for me. Just about every time he had a scene, it re-electrified the movie for me. It's just that Denzel effect. Now, there's a lot of like weird ass historians out there, like film people who are like, oh, like he brought a Brooklyn accent into 200 AD Rome. Listen, y'all, it's a fucking movie, okay? And on top of that, let me not even say that. Let me not do that. Okay. Let me not just let let me not just be so dismissive of that criticism. Okay. Yes, Denzel was up there with this Brooklyn accent for sure. Okay. It definitely was not what their accent was. I'm going to address his accent thing with 2 points. I'm going to hit it with 2 points. First point is these motherfuckers don't even have accurate Roman accents. And that's something that people tend to not even realize in most Roman and Greek movies. Almost every Roman and Greek movie we watch, what do they got? They got a British accent, y'all. A British accent is not a Roman or Greek accent. They're not the same, okay? But we associate the British accent with like white culture. And I don't even mean that like I'm not even trying to say that in a derogatory way. I mean like European, like when we think of like high class, highly intelligent European societies, like we will just automatically start throwing a British accent onto it. And it's because the British accent is fire. The British accent is smooth, it's sexy, it's intelligent. Like it's it's got that effect of just it's got that effect of just amplifying whatever it is you're saying. Okay? It's a beautiful, beautiful dialect or accent. And I love that they do use it in these Roman and Greek movies, but that's not their accent. You know what was funny as shit to me was if you seen Thor Love and Thunder, and you saw and I think that is Russell Crowe as Zeus. You see Russell Crowe's Zeus with a Greek accent. Because Zeus was a Greek god. He was from Greece, and so he had a Greek accent. And I think that threw people off. I think people thought it was funny. No offense to the Greeks, right? It was just that I think most people associate Greece and Rome with a British accent. And that's our fault. I would probably say that's mostly us Americans' faults for consistently throwing and slapping British accents onto these movies when that's not even their culture for real. Okay. So there's that. Okay. There's the one, the Romans in this movie got British accents. Now, two, okay, to address Denzel's accent. Two is Denzel's one of those actors. He is one of the few, the chosen actors who I want you to do you in every movie. I want Denzel. If I go to watch a movie that has Denzel Washington in it, I want to see Denzel Washington be Denzel Washington. Okay. And there's very, very few actors who we can say that about. Okay. Another just a really, really first thought, random one popping into my mind. Another guy like that is fucking Jason Statham. Whatever Jason Statham movie he is in, whatever movie Jason Statham is in, I want him to be a British cutthroat, a Cockney accent, cutthroat ass hard motherfucker. Like I don't want to see him try to portray another accent. I don't want to see Jason Statham try to be a fucking a Missouri music teacher. I don't want to see that. Okay. I want to see Jason Statham do his shit every single time. Same exact shit with Denzel. Denzel did his thing in this movie. And for me, it did not detract at all. It did not detract from the movie at all. Okay. And that's just my opinion. That's just my humble opinion. Okay. So moving on from the Denzel criticisms, the Denzel glazing, the criticism of his Macrinus character. Okay, we're gonna dive back into the story of um Hano has now been captured. Okay. He's now been captured and he has now been oh, you know what? Before we even get into this part, because it's just a funny little quip, but what precedes the point I was about to make was they've been rounded up. They're being shipped off. They're about to get sold into slavery, into the gladiator pits and all that good stuff. He's on the boat with Peter Mensa. Okay. Now, Peter Mensa was, if you've seen Spartacus, you understand what they have, what Ridley Scott has in his hands. And he has, he has a fucking gold mine in his hands with Peter Mensa. Peter Mensa was on Emmaus in the Spartacus series. If you have not seen Spartacus, Spartacus is the only gladiator media in existence, medium in existence, outside of the Gladiator films and Ben-Hur that I have knowledge of, right? Because like I said previously, Gladiator 1 was so fucking good. No one even wanted to touch the Gladiator categories after that. But Spartacus, the show, Andy White, okay, Peter Mensa, these motherfuckers came out of left field and they was crushing it in this TV show. Excellent, excellent show if you have not seen it. Okay. RIP to Andy White as well. With that said, they killed Peter Mensa off way too early. Way too early. The dynamic that they could have had with Peter Mensa, okay? Um, Hano slash Lucius, uh, General Acacius and Macrinus, the dynamic between the four of them would have been ridiculous. Would have been ridiculous. But no, what did they decide to do? I don't know what this was about. I don't know if it was like they only had a certain budget and they couldn't pay him, or maybe Peter had other projects that he had to work on, and so he can take on a long a role in this film. But they give him a cut. His cut is infectious. He knows he's about to go meet his ancestors. Okay. And so he gets sold off. They throw him into the pits. Hano's in the pits. Peter Mensa's in the pits. And they about sick baboons on him. I will give it to this movie as well. This movie had some of the most creative, like animal versus human fight scenes that I've seen in a while. Like it's hard for me to think off the top of like recent animal versus human fight scenes, but this one takes the cake so far in recent memory, right? But they make him fight some baboons. Peter Mesa got cut in his arm. He knows he's ready to die. The thing that kills me is he is too ready to accept his death. He is too ready to accept it. What does he do during the fight? He takes a knee. He takes a knee right away. And they sick these baboons on him. Not only do they sick these baboons on him, they they're shooting these motherfuckers with darts. I think these darts are getting them high as fuck. So these baboons are zooted, blood hungry. Their ribs are sticking out. They've been starved. They're coming at you, and you take a knee. Baboon jumps on him right away, bites his fucking neck off. Bites his goddamn neck off. I I was flabbergasted. I was shocked that they did that to him so early in the film. Okay, he should have been in way longer. He should have played up. They should have played up the him as Hano's mentor, him as Hano's father figure. Maybe they could have had him down and out. Maybe they could have had him like, okay, like you're not gonna fight and shit. Like he could have been working with the Indian guy. I forgot his name, but the retired gladiator who had fixed up Lucius later in the movie. There was so much they could have done with him. And the biggest thing that I would have loved to have seen was the back and forth between him and Denzel Washington, because Denzel Washington throughout the movie is constantly playing up Hando's rage. just manipulating him through his emotion, right? Hanno wants the head of General Cassius for the death of his wife. Okay, this is all he wants. And before he leaves this earth, all he wants is that man's head. And so he's blinded by his rage for like half the movie. Peter Mensa would have been such a great counterpoint to Denzel Washington's devil that was on Hanno's shoulder. Okay. So they killed him off way too early. And you know what? I'll give my little take on what I think they should have done later on in the video in this video. Okay. But moving on from uh the whole fight scene and him getting his neck bit out. One thing I did like during that scene, because the Peter Mensa thing fucking crushed me, was Hanno versus these baboons was funny as shit. Hanno versus these baboons was funny as shit. That moment where Hanno squares up with the fucking baboon and starts screaming in his face was hilarious. It was so hilarious, but the crazy part was it was also believable. Like, I believe that shit. I believed that boy was that crazy. I believe that shit when he did it. Okay. And because he did that, after the fights, he earns the respects of the men down in the pits right away. They start fucking with him. You know, they start making the ooh, ooh, ooh. They start hitting him with the monkey sounds and all that good stuff. But you know for facts that nobody's gonna try him. He earned the respect of everyone in that pit right away. Okay. Um, with that though, I'm going to transition to something I didn't like. Okay, what I didn't like was after they did the whole first fight, and now they're getting lined up and inspected and what have you. They're getting looked at by Macrinus, right? All the gladiators they're getting looked at by Macrinus, and Macrinus got his dog on the side of Vigo, right? Vigo is like the gladiator trainers of these guys. He's like the trainer slash warden over these gladiators essentially. And Macrinus tells Vigo to put Hanno through the fucking paces, okay? And the paces essentially is uh initiation by getting your ass beat, right? And so Vigo needs to whip his ass in front of everybody. I think Macrinus just wants to see what Hanno got, okay? So Vigo, I think he lets him loose, but not before sucker punching him. Okay. But during all that time, okay, Vigo sucker punching Hano in the face. Vigo has on these thin gauntlets. Now, what I'm about to critique, this is about to be like a fight critique. This is about to be a choreography critique or a special effects critique. I don't know what it is. Lump all those categories up together. I'm critiquing all three of those. Okay. He has on these thin gauntlets, okay, or metal gloves or whatever they are, and they have spikes on them. And he's punching Hano in the face with metal gloves that have spikes on the end of them. And Hano did not bleed one time from the 10 plus punches he took from Vigo. Now, for me, I'm big into I'm really big into like the fight choreography stuff, the special effects stuff, like that. The not no 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 not the special effects stuff. I'm not gonna harp too much on special effects like CGI and shit. When it comes to the fight scenes, the choreography and things along that line, like shit just stands out to me really fast. Okay. And that one just threw me off. After my second go around, it didn't bother me the first time I watched it. The first time I watched it, I didn't even notice it. The second time I watched it, okay, that's when I saw that he wasn't bleeding, and that shit threw me the fuck off, bro. Because you he Hano would be on the floor leaking. Honestly, after the second punch, he probably would not get up from that shit. Like y'all have to check it out with the gloves with the metal spikes on the end. You're not get I don't care who you are. If you put on some metal gloves with spikes on them and hit anyone in the face, that person is going down. Okay. So stunt choreography team, makeup, whoever's in charge of that shit, you kind of drop the ball on that a little bit. Okay. But at that point, I am being very, very granular and nitpicky about that shit. Okay. But it did throw me off. Okay. But getting back into this shit, I did like Macrinus sets him up He sets Hano up for a little Mandingo fight. Okay, they about to have a little white Mandingo fight in the Emperor's little private areas, palace. I don't know where they were at. Okay, but we got this scene, and I did like this scene, right? Where we're entering into this little area before the fight, before we see what's about to take place. They got fucking Rhino's head on a table for people to come up and shave ivory off of. Now, now watch this. I am peripherally familiar with the whole illegal ivory poaching and the trade of it and all that stuff. I do not support or condone the hunting of rare game or ivory. Okay. But it was just so I've never in my life seen a rhino's head on a table. And I've never, ever in a movie seen people shaving off pieces of ivory. Because I'm like, what the fuck do you even use ivory for? Like what? Like all I know about ivory is soap. That's it. I just know the ivory soap. I don't even know what ivory goes into. Okay. So again, y'all, I'm American. I'm not that well educated on things like ivory trading and shit. So if you know what that is, let me know. Let me know what the fuck you use ivory for. Because I'm like, why is there a rhino's head on the table? Why is there a rhino's head on the table? And why are we killing elephants for their ivory? Okay. But moving forward, they have their Mandingo fight. Okay, it's Hano versus this guy, and Macrinus is making side bets on the side with the with that one guy, and I forget his name. I didn't take the note on his name. I probably should have, but he finessed this dude left and right. He got him for everything. By the end of the movie, he he gets this man for everything he owns to set him up as a lapdog by the end. Really, really tragic. And it does fall in line with like I think common Roman and Greek like stories, where people gotta learn lessons about their hubris and shit. But he did suffer mad tragedy in this movie. That guy. If you remember that guy's name too, let me know. But moving on, okay, we are introduced more personally. We saw them earlier when they were doing their whole thing with General Acacius earlier in the film, but uh I started really nah, you know what? I did start disliking these guys during the General Acacius welcome home parade. Okay. But I do need to take note that I did not like these Emperor twins at all. Okay, so that's going to be one of my points I'm getting into. Is one of my dislikes for the films were these Emperor twins. Okay, uh, I understand conceptually and contextually why these like crazy ass Emperor twins are in the movie. I believe historically, after the fall of Marcus Aurelius, the Roman Empire just was tossed into chaos with terrible emperors and all this other stuff. I'm not too aware of the details, but we do know for facts that the Roman Empire fell after uh uh Marcus Aurelius. Okay. And I guess these twins are kind of like personifications of like the greed and corruption and chaos that the Roman Empire had fallen to. But it just got so over the top at points. Like who they were was just so over the top. And it kind of meant like, it kind of bounces off of Joaquin Phoenix's character from the last one. Because his character was like it was on the verge of being over the top. It was like just at the brink of like Joffrey levels. But he was more, I don't know, maybe composed. Joaquin Phoenix's character. But it would definitely he definitely was not unhinged like these two emperors were. These motherfuckers were crazy. Okay. And I don't know if they were written like that. I can even blame the actors. I'm not even blaming the actors about these guys. I'm blaming more so the writers of whoever wrote these characters in. They could have dialed it back just a little bit. These guys were such jokes. It was crazy. I feel like it would have been better if there was that element, if there was like another element to for Macrinus to spar off of. I think Macrinus's character would have been even greater if his sparring partners themselves would have been greater. It's like when you see a fighter in the ring, right? You see a fighter in the ring or the octagon, and they are faced with steeper, higher level competition. It forces them to compete at an even higher level themselves. And I think we've gone more out of the Macrinus character. We would have gotten more out of Denzel Washington. We would have gotten more out of the other actors. Had the emperors been a little more difficult to handle and manipulate, they were just too easily manipulated, too naive. Okay, and just you know, it would have been a better mental arena had they changed that up. But let me move on from there because we will get into more details about that stuff a little bit later. Okay. Um, Other thing I disliked, okay, and it first pops up in that scene with the whole Mandingo fight scene and shit, was this Virgil poetry line that they just kept repeating throughout the movie, and they just kept trying to force it down our throats. They got it written on the walls of Lucius's room when he was a child, and I'm just like, dog, like it's not that deep. Like this line y'all keep repeating is not that poetic. It's a little pretentious with how they're trying to like shove it down our throats, and it came off corny. I will say this: I think a large majority of that, for me personally, because I know it's just me complaining about it, but it was probably just a translation issue. I think that line, um, because it was probably Roman, right? I don't think that's one of those lines that should be read in a translated version. However, whatever original language it was made in, if it was Roman, if it was Latin, right? Uh, they should keep it to that. Okay. They should have said it in that language. I think it would have went way harder if they said it in Latin and then just gave us subtitles. That would have went way harder. Okay. With that said now, uh they transition into out they transition out of one-on-one Mandingo fights into the Colosseums. Okay. So now we step into one of the big first dogs of the Colosseums, and that's Glyceo the Destroyer riding on top of the rhino. That shit was hard. I really, really, really fucked with that character. Even though we don't even see too much of him, and he does get got by Hano at the end. And I felt a way that like that Glyceo had to spare Hano and then Hano got to kill. I get it. It's all the popularity of the crowd. Um, but Glyceo was hard, bro. That man was hard. He was hard as a motherfucker. Okay. Uh, with that said, though, to bounce off of me liking Glyceo, who I didn't like in that scene was the guy who kept trying to 1v1 him. This man was trying to 1v1 him with Glyceo on top of a rhino. Guys, listen, that shit was stupid. That shit was really stupid. Why would you do that? But Hano's over there being like, "Hey, y'all, let's work in a team. Let's strategize. Let's do this. Let's do that." This guy's like, "No, y'all are some bitches. I does this shit. I does this shit." He tried to fight the rhino. He got I'm not gonna lie. It was satisfying as shit to see him get impaled and then flung into a pillar. Shit was funny as shit. But that man was stupid. Okay. Now we're moving along, we're moving along, we're moving along, we're getting through the movie. The next thing that stood out to me that I liked about the movie a lot was the next Coliseum scene. Okay. The next Coliseum scene, they upped it from them fighting some rhinos, okay, to them now having a naval battle inside the Coliseum. Not only are they having a naval battle within the Coliseum, they got fucking sharks in the water. They got sharks in Rome in the Colosseum. How? How? I don't, bro. I saw shit. I laughed like shit when I saw the sharks. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was cool as fuck. It just spoke to the monkey in me, bro. That I saw the sharks. I love that shit. I love that they did that. And who knows? maybe that's historically accurate. Maybe I'm not well read enough, and that is a historical accuracy. When I saw that the Colosseum was filled with water, I was like, you know what? I think I read when I was younger that the Romans and the Greeks they did build aqueducts, and they were the uh, progenitors of modern plumbing and all this stuff. So I was like, okay, I could see how they could create the infrastructure to get some water inside the Colosseum. But you got sharks in there. How? How? I would have loved if they threw in like a 20-second clip of them just transporting the sharks into the Coliseum. That shit would have been hilarious. Okay. But now we're moving along through the movie, right? We're moving along. And the naval scene was cool as shit, but now we're getting into the final Coliseum fight of the movie. And like I said, I'm not gonna do no extensive breakdown of every single scene of the movie. I'm just gonna talk about the shit that stood out to me, the things that I liked, the things that I didn't like. Okay. Anything else that was just kind of neutral, I'm not gonna speak on it. Okay. But we jumped from the first Coliseum fight to the second Colosseum fight, and now moving into the third Colosseum fight. Okay. You have Lucius, now officially Lucius. I believe at this point in the movie is revealed that he is Lucius versus General Cassius. And now I have a fight critique of something that I did like, a choreography piece that I did like. Okay. And that was a small but funny detail to me. Lucius and the Cassius, they're fighting. And the general catches Lucius in a standing head and arm position, right? Um, if you're unaware of what that is if I am putting you in a head and arm position, I have your arm propped up in the air, pressed against your ear, with one of my arms wrapped underneath your armpit and around your neck to trap your head and arm together, right? This is a great control position. If you get someone on the floor, you could even finish them with the choke, right? But General Cassius got this boy Lucius locked up in the standing head and arm, right? Lucius got a sword. He got a sword in his arm. And he's locked up. His funniest shit, he's locked up in the head and arm, trying to stab General Cassius with the sword. The problem is he's so close and he doesn't have the angle or the space to do it. That he's just doing it and nothing's happening, right? And on top of it, I'm pretty sure General Casey's has armor on too, but the scene was funny as shit to me for what it was. The scene itself was not comedic at all, and that scene I think was not written to be funny. I just thought the his will and his determination by any means necessary was funny as shit. And I also thought it was just a great, like, one of those little touches of like, fight strategy. You fight at your range. General Cassius closed the distance to the point where Lucius could not effectively use his ranged weapon, which is a sword. Okay. Had Lucius had a knife at his disposal and dropped it into his free hand, maybe he could start poking some holes in General Cassius, but General Cassius, um, you know, whether he had guessed or whether he knew that he was only supplied a sword, it was a great tactic to close the distance and negate the ranged effectiveness of a sword. So I like that little detail. Okay. But now that transitions me into what I didn't like about that whole Colosseum scene. Okay. The whole last fight, the whole Lucius coming for General Casey's head and all that good stuff, right? Matter of fact, now that I'm thinking about it, I gotta backtrack. One thing I said earlier, I don't think it was even General Cassius that killed his wife. It was just the fact that General Cassius's um invasion had caused the death of his wife that he's so angry at him for, right? But it was not General Cassius himself. But Lucius has been so gung ho on killing this man that he finally got the job done, and it wasn't even by his own hand. But General Cassius dies in the third Colosseum fight. And that's after also having to kill some of his own men. Very, very tragic to watch. And I'm watching this thinking they dropped the ball again. They dropped the ball again on having a, an A-list actor have more impact on this movie. Like, had Peter Mensa and General Cassius, uh, oh man, why is it leaving me right now? Pedro Pascal, Jesus Christ. Peter Mensa and Pedro Pascal, had they stayed in this movie long enough, okay, this is what let me save it to the end. Let me save it to the end because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you guys my rewrite of Gladiator 2 at the end of this. Now, I don't necessarily like, obviously, I don't like that he died. Obviously, I don't like that General Casey's died. But him getting shot up by all those arrows was pretty fucking cool. I'm not gonna lie. I don't think I've seen anyone get hit with arrows like that in a movie ever. I don't think I've seen that shit. When it hit, the impact, you felt it. It was crazy. And he got hit by like 30 arrows. This shit was crazy. Okay. But now we transition. Obviously, he was a fan favorite. Citizens loved him. Rome is rioting over Casey's death now. Okay. And the first part that leads up to the rest of this was funny as shit. Okay, Macrinus begins his further manipulations of the emperors. Okay, to the demise of I believe Geta, Emperor Geta. But it was funny as hell to see the younger emperor when Macrinus comes over to him start complaining about how his brother has been after him all his life, even in the womb, and he very, very vividly remembers him trying to kill him with his umbilical cord when they were in the womb. Bro, bro, like you can't even make this shit up. They wrote these motherfuckers to be that crazy. It's hilarious that they wrote them to be that crazy. It's fucking hilarious. But Macrinus pulls his strings. He gets the older emperor, the reigning emperor, um, Emperor Geta. He gets his throat slit by his younger brother, and boom, you see you see Macrinus just stepping further and further into who he is, into the plots and the schemes, right? And that's when you transition into this next part, which again starts off funny as shit. It like these scenes start off funny as shit and then they get dark, right? But the next scene is now there's one emperor. There were two, now there's one, right? And the emperor has gathered the Senate, and the Senate, boom, they're sitting around, and the emperor starts talking about how there's going to be some changes. And he starts naming the new positions of power, right? The new people that he's going to place into power. The first person that he appoints as first citizen, right, or first consul is the highly esteemed Dondis. Hail Dondis. Hail Dondis. Dondis was the fucking monkey, y'all. Hail Dondis. It was fucking hilarious. And it was even funnier with everyone shocked and Denzel clearing his throat, right? Everyone's shocked. The room is silent with the monkey getting called up. Denzel clears his throat. He's the first. He's the first to hail the almighty Dondas. He goes, Hail Dondas. Hail Dondas. Everyone starts clapping. This shit is hilarious. Okay. With that said, Denzel lets Geta have his moment. Denzel himself gets appointed second consul, right? Emperor Geta is effectively like dismissed or he leaves, whatever. We don't care about that guy anymore, right? And what happens is Denzel tells the Senate to sit down. And the air of the room, the air of the film dramatically changes as soon as he says, sit down. Two words. No one, very, very few actors. I won't say no one, but very, very rarefied airs of actors who they got two words and they're going to deliver it and it's going to change the trajectory of the movie, like Denzel Washington. Okay. Tells the Senate to sit the fuck down. He says sit down. I added that extra word in there for how emphatic it felt in that moment. But he pulls out Emperor Getta's head and puts it on a fucking table And this is what feels like the third act. This is the beginning of the third act. Macrinus is showing the Senate that he has the power to kill an emperor and be rewarded for it. He has the power to kill an emperor and be rewarded for it, letting him know essentially, I'm that guy, right? I am him now. And he starts propositioning for more power. He starts negotiating a promise to calm the streets of Rome after the murder of General Acacius. But in return, he will need the full power of the Praetorian army. And it is fucking crazy to see him hit this transition. Okay. It's fucking crazy to see him hit this transition. Now, I will say this too. Directly off this scene, I think directly off this scene, they should have added another 30 minutes to this. You know what? Let me save that for the end. Let me save that for the end. Okay. And I'll hit you guys with my little rewrite. Now, with that said, it's then revealed later that Macrinus, whole time, okay, he's talking to Lucilla before he gets her killed. He's now revealing who he is. And Macrinus himself was Marcus Aurelius' slave. And everything comes back full circle. Full circle. It also makes sense for me. One thing that I had noticed throughout the film was he kept adjusting his clothes, right? Throughout the whole movie, he keeps adjusting his clothing and shit, right? And it makes sense to me now after he makes that reveal. Because he definitely likes the clothes. He's fly as shit throughout the whole movie. He likes the threads, he likes the cloth, he likes the cuts, he likes all that shit. But he keeps having to adjust it as if he's not used to wearing it. And so now it makes sense with him coming from the lowest rung of slavery to him himself essentially becoming the emperor of Rome. Absolutely crazy. And I love that little touch of the clothes adjustment. If that's what it was, okay? Maybe I'm just reading into that, but if that's what it was, that's a great touch. Okay. Now, I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. I'm gonna get to the last part of the movie for me, okay, that I'm gonna talk about, and then I'm gonna start wrapping it up with two one worst moment, one best moment, and then I'm gonna wrap it up with how I thought they should have adjusted some of the writing. Okay. But the final scene, I did not fuck with. I did not like the last fight scene that they had, the 1v1 between Lucius and Macrinus. It felt like a cop out. For me, it felt like a cop out. I What I saw and what I thought I was promised from the movie was a big dumbass battle. A big stupid ass bloody battle between the Praetorians and General Cassius's army. And it felt like they were just trying to wrap it up. It felt like they were trying to wrap it up. Oh, I mean, I'll give it to them too. It also felt like they were trying to pay a little bit of homage back to the first one, having a 1v1 finish out the whole thing. I thought the shit was stupid. I'm like, bro, listen, Macrinus, you 60, dog. This this guy Lucius, he just took the heads of half the Roman gladiators, bro. Like you're not going to beat this kid in battle. Like it's not happening. It was it was just it was just so idiotic to me that a guy who'd been plotting his whole life, his entire existence, he has plotted to be felt. He has plotted to destroy the Roman kingdom, the Roman Empire, to take the reins and rewrite it as his own. And he fucking did it. He rose from slavery to essentially become the emperor. Fuck that second console shit. He was essentially the emperor by that point. And he threw it all away in a one on one. That's madness, bro. That's not like, no, I don't believe that shit. I don't think that this guy Macrinus would make that move at the last second like that. Okay. And on top of it, you just got these armies, got all these guys showing up and no one's fighting. It just blew the fuck out of me. Okay. I hated that ending. I'm not gonna say hate. I did not like that ending at all. Okay. It should have been a bloody war. It should have been Macrinus doing everything he could to preserve his life and still try to win the battle and try to take Rome as his own. Okay, like it was just crazy. It was ridiculous. And with that said, that was my worst moment. That was my worst moment of the film, the whole movie, the lead up, the build up, all of that for a 1v1 battle between Denzel and Lucius. It should have. It could have taken it to higher heights than the first Gladiator had they finished off with a big ass battle. Okay, but with that said, I will also say, so best moment now, transitioning into the best moment of the movie for me, Macrinus effectively taking over the Senate in Rome as a whole. That scene, he puts the head on the table, he starts telling the Senate what to do. That is my favorite scene of the movie. So for me, Denzel had both the worst and best moments of this movie for me. Denzel was um he was an electrifying vehicle for driving the story forward, for keeping my attention within this movie. This guy, Paul Mescal, I believe. Was that his name again? Paul Mescal. Um, he definitely he he's definitely going to get thrown some big action roles after this. This man looks like a gladiator. Like he's got the nose, he's got the face, like he got that little like he just got the structure for it, right? He got the build. He's shown he can fight, he can act. Like this guy, he just became a star after this movie. Um, and I really like this movie overall. Overall, I really, really liked it. Uh, I think right here, IMDb has it rated as a 6.6 out of 10. I think that's justifiable. I think Gladiator 2 as a 6.6 out of 10 is justifiable. I would have given it like I would have bumped it up to a smooth 7, you know, maybe a maybe a 8 if I'm feeling really, depending on the mood in which I watch it, depending on how many drinks I have in me while I'm watching it. Because I give the first Gladiator, that's a 9. That's a 9 or 9.5 out of 10 every time. So Gladiator 2, I would rate it slightly higher than 6.6, but 6.6 is justified. Now, I think IMDb, I think the ratings on this site would have been higher had the screenwriters for this movie had kept Peter Mensa and Pedro Pascal deeper into these movies. This is what you do now, okay? This is all you got to do. This is all you got to do to drag the rating up from a 6.6 to an 8. 6.6 to an 8. I'm going to get Gladiator 2, you would have had 1.2 stars if you did this. Keep Peter Mensa and Pedro Pascal in this. Peter Mensa, um, he, Peter Mensa suffers his wound, but survives the baboon fights, okay, shows that he still has a little umph in him, right? For to gain the respect, to garner the respect of the other gladiators he's going to meet. But since he is so injured, they know he must sit on the sidelines, but they got no problems against it. Oh, gee, sit down. You earned it. Okay. Like ride out the rest of your days, healing people or doing other things. Maybe he becomes a trainer, um, like alongside Vigo or whatever, almost like reprising his role as an Animeus guy. Um, whatever you gotta do to keep him out of the fight. You keep him to the side out of the fight. We progress the movie all the way forward. Pedro Pascal is not shot to death in that Coliseum. Okay, Pedro Pascal is not shot to death in the Coliseum. Instead, what happens is Pedro Pascal is imprisoned. Okay, you imprison Pedro Pascal because now what you're going to do is since you're already crazy ass emperors and shit, you're going to crucify this motherfucker. Okay, so you're going to save him for later. You're going to imprison him and you're going to crucify him the next day alongside Lucilla. That's going to be the game plan. Okay. What you do is this is what you do. You get Peter Mensa to consistently pull back on what the fuck Macrinus is saying to Lucius, and you remind Lucius who he is. Okay, you're Peter Mensa, and you remind him that no, this is unbecoming of you. For you to give into your emotions like this is unbecoming. Keep this straight and narrow. That man is not your enemy. General Acacius is not your enemy, and you have Peter Mensa forgive Acacius for the crimes he committed against his own people, as to show that I am a Numidian leader and you will follow suit, Hano. You will follow my lead. If I can forgive a man who took my whole village, you can forgive a man who took your wife, right? Because we have bigger fish to fry. We have bigger problems to attend to, and there is a bigger, darker enemy that we must address, and that is Macrinus, right? And the whole time in between, you weave in and out of all those scenes. Like you give Macrinus and Peter Menta scenes where they're going back and forth, right? And they're having their verbal sparring sessions and all that good shit. Maybe you throwing uh um General Casius in there as well. No, maybe not General Casius, because General Casius is like he's too much of like the warrior type. Maybe Peter Mensa, he's more of like, the leader type. Like he led, like, aside from armies, he led like nations. And so he's more equipped to verbally and mentally spar with Macrinus, right? Boom, and you got them weaving in and out, and you got them forming alliances, and Peter Mensa forgiving Acacius, and then you get Lucius and Peter Mensa breaking Acacius out of the prison. They got him broken out, right? And the emperor, he don't want to start panicking and shit. So he's going to carry on with the crucifixion of Lucilla. Lucilla can still die, okay? But he's going to try to stay cool, calm, and collected. Macrinus is going to try to stay cool, calm, and collected. But now they know they got this triple, they got a triple threat now. Pedro Pascal, Peter Mensa, Paul Mescal. Okay. You gather them all up, they start getting their armies together, they start doing all their good shit, and then they meet up at the end, and there's the battle. The battle is all set up now. The battle is there. Okay. You got Denzel Washington with the Roman army, and then you got Peter Mensa alongside General Cassius with his army and Paul Mescal. And they have their big ass, stupid ass war. Okay. And then maybe Peter Mensa dies at the end of that battle now, and then uh General Acacius, he ends up killing Denzel instead. That'd be a great story for Lucius, right? To quell the rage and to not repeat his cycles you know, of violence that he has started to encumber throughout the film. You have General Cassius take out Denzel instead. And then who knows? Maybe Lucius steps up into the Emperor title. Maybe oh no, they give it back to the Senate. He wants to give it back to the Senate. But maybe Lucius, aside from just bestowing powers back onto the Senate, he also anoints um General Cassius as like first consul or something. Something like that, right? I would have preferred the story written out like that, but that's just my humble opinion. uh, with that said, guys, we are going to call it a wrap for the first episode. If you have stuck with me all the way through this, okay, to hear my opinions, to help you move some bowels on the toilet, to add as a little commentary while you're playing your video game or commuting to work, I humbly, humbly appreciate it. I'm going to try to pump these out and just keep shooting the shit about movies that I like. I think that's what it's going to be about. I'm going to try to give you guys some of my passion and my love for all of these films that come out through these audio videos, because like I'm going to put them out on YouTube, but it's really going to be audio for real. Um and yeah, with that said, this is what I'm thinking about doing, right? Is right on the horizon, right? What's on the horizon is we have the Lunar New Year. We have Lunar New Year. I am a huge fan of kung fu movies, Eastern culture, all that good stuff. So I definitely have to do something in honor of Lunar New Year coming up. But with all the talks and arguments about what is Denzel Washington's best role, I think I also need to drop another Denzel Washington movie. And I will tell you guys this right now, a little sneak peek. For me personally, Denzel got a lot of great roles. He got a lot of great ones. He got a couple of roles that I don't even remember that well, right? He has a lot of high level movies, high level roles, right? Um, my favorite, I think my favorite Denzel Washington performance of all time, it might be Malcolm X. Okay. So no, be on the lookout. That might be on the horizon. I might do a Malcolm X breakdown. Malcolm X is long as fuck. Okay. It's like 3.5 hours. But um it's been a while since I've seen it, so I'm going to take my time. I'm gonna take some notes. I'm gonna do something similar. There's going to be notes that I got. I might go off the top a little bit, but I'm going to try to have fun the whole time I'm talking about it because at the end of the day, y'all, I want you guys to have fun while you're listening, but I also have a lot of fun just ranting about these fucking movies because I do love this shit. Okay. So with that said, be on the lookout. Gung Hei Fat Choi. We got Chinese New Lunar New Year on the cusp. We also got in America we got Black History Month on the cusp in honor of that. Black excellence, Black leader in Malcolm X and Denzel Washington. Uh, but again, if you got Black friends, like Black History Month is not just relegated to February, it is American history. But we do have it on our calendar. And so tis the season of Chinese New Year, Lunar New Year, Black History Month. We got Malcolm X, Denzel Washington, um, on the horizons, just to piggyback off of these conversations of Denzel's best role. And then I'm gonna figure something out to celebrate Chinese New Lunar New Year. I'm thinking I am leaning towards I'm leaning towards Once Upon a Time in China with Jet Li. Okay, but we're gonna see. We're gonna see, guys. That's a if you know, you know. That's one of them ones. Okay. But with that said, this has been the first episode of Movie Moves because movies are always a move. And I'll be catching you guys out next time for the next move. Peace.